This is Everything Rugby League, a podcast for fans of the sport everywhere.
Can you believe it?
Each week, Keith and Lewis cover news and insights from the game's grassroots to the NRL and around the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Everything Rugby League podcast with my usual co-host Lewis on a plane from London to Sydney as we speak. I'm pleased to be joined by one of Everything Rugby League's chief contributors, that being Stuart McLennan. Stuart, how are you keeping, mate?
Very well, thanks. And good to be back in the seat again so quickly after the Greek episode.
Yes, great to have you on board as well. So without ado, let's just jump straight into it. It was an absolutely cracking weekend of rugby league on both sides, or both hemispheres, I should say, which brings us to our first usual segment, Scoreboard Update.
It was a cracking weekend. In the NRL, I think most of the games went as to plan, as you'd expected, although there was a couple of surprises. But the first one, we did start with a cracking game. It was Melbourne 24 beating Penrith 22. It came down to Dylan Edwards attempting a 2-point field goal. He missed it. So Melbourne pretty much going to be minor premiers, I'd say, from now on. Manly 24 beat the Warriors 10. Eastern Suburbs 38 put a big score on Parramatta 14. Canterbury 30 beat the Dolphins 10. That match was highlighted by the chase between Josh Addo-Carr and the Hammer catching him up. So that was a big talking point out of that one. The Cowboys put a big score on Canberra 4, so disappointing again for Canberra. The Dragons 32 beat the Titans 16 to put the Dragons back in the 8. The Sharks 19 and the Knights 18 in a close one with a shootout of field goals. And I've left the best one to last, actually. But the West Tigers held on and only just held on to beat South Sydney 18 points to 16.
Yeah, I love that the Tigers won. I hate that we're now sort of for the third year in a row. So, you know, it's a pity love sort of. Maybe they'll avoid finishing last. I hope to see them do what the Doggies have done. I think everyone sort of at this stage hopes to see that kind of love for the Tigers. But any club that's taken on the old Western Suburbs rot, I'm afraid, is always going to be up against it. Although I am a Warriors fan, which every listener knows. So I ponder whether or not I would prefer to be a Tigers fan or a Warriors fan. In the fact that the Tigers, in their current format, have been around since year 2000, but they do have a premiership. And the Warriors have been around since 1995, and we don't have a premiership. What do you reckon? Would you prefer to be a Tigers fan or a Warriors fan?
Look, I do cling very tightly to 2005, and it was a very exciting moment. But there's been a lot of since 2011, there's been a lot of depressing years for the West Tigers. So actually, I'd say, the Warriors have given their fans more joy in the last, what are we talking about, 13 years than the Tigers have. It's been pretty sad. And look, we've won 5 games this year, which is actually an improvement on the last 2 years where we won 4 games each year. So, that's pretty dire, to be honest, and pretty hard to take as a fan.
Yeah. I would prefer... Yeah, I'd prefer to be a Warriors fan as well, even though we haven't won one. It's just... We've had a lot more, the median level of enjoyment would be higher as a Warriors fan rather than the range being wider as a Tigers fan, I think is a good way of putting it.
It's hot and cold and mainly cold, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's take the listeners over the current ladder as we approach finals time. I think we're only a few weeks away. You're right, the Storm seems to have the minor premiership wrapped up now on 40 points. The Panthers on 36, Roosters in third on 34, equal with the Sharks at absolute saved win in terms of clinging to the top four against Newcastle on the weekend. So that makes up the top four. The Bulldogs right on top of, right on their heels, I should say. The Bulldogs are on 32 points in fifth. Manly's on 31 points in sixth. Cowboys on 30, and the Dragons sneak into the top 8 on 28, and the decline or fall of the Dolphins unfortunately continues. We've got the Broncos and the Knights and the Raiders all on 24. Okay, so that is still quite interesting. Geez, it's not a good time to be a Queensland fan, with the Dolphins then slipping out. All four Queensland teams are, three of the four Queensland teams are now out of the 8, so not a good time to be a Queensland fan. Just before we move on to Super League results, which are it's a fascinating competition right now. We'll get to that in a second. Anything to add on the ladder, Stuart?
Yeah, look, as far as the ladder goes, I know it's mathematically possible for a number of teams to slip into the 8, and I think even the Titans, mathematically, I mean, look, it's not going to happen, but um, I think it's down to 9 teams now. Like I think the Dolphins really the only ones that can slip into the 8. At the expense of perhaps the Dragons or someone else. But really that they're starting to lock in now. The other thing is that I think most people are thinking Melbourne and Penrith are contenders. I am still, and I know they haven't won the big ones, but I still think the Roosters are a contender as well. Sharks, perhaps not. But yeah, look, I think the Roosters have a lot of potential and could actually improve going into the finals. Given the team they've got a number of high-profile players leaving at the end of the year, and I think they're right to give the finals a really really good bash.
I just had a random idea, and we won't do it now, but an idea for a future episode would be to compile a ladder of what team is it best for the game of rugby league to succeed, 1 through 17.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be a fascinating ladder and one that we could spend an entire episode debating. But bookmark that. We'll get to that at a later date. Moving on to the English Super League results. It was Magic weekend in the English Super League. So all games were played at Elland Road in Leeds, which is a bit of a strange choice in itself. We'll touch on that when we go through your column shortly, though.
I've certainly got an opinion on that.
Yeah, as do I. All right, so we got London Broncos getting their third win of the season against battle for the wooden spoon, really. Hull FC have had an absolutely shocking few years, really. London 29, Hull FC 4. We had Warrington over Leeds, 24-6. That was an interesting game. Catalan easily beat by a red-hot Hull KR. I don't know how they choose the colours for their away jersey, but whatever. I'm done ranting about that with my Redback Castleford's bright green jersey last week.
It's crazy. It's crazy. As a Tigers fan, it's even crazier.
Yeah, you would think it would just be like the alternative accent of your home jersey.
Yes, exactly.
Which makes the most sense. But anyway, in probably the most the game of the big dogs of the round, we had Wigan easily defeating St Helens 20-0. Lee Leopards 26-0 over Salford, Red Devils, and Huddersfield, who I've been pretty harsh on last week, saying I don't even know if they deserve to be in this competition. I don't know what Huddersfield adds, apart from being the birthplace of rugby league at the George Hotel in 1895. Mm-hmm. That club, very, very lucky to be, 9th in the IMG rankings, because I think you can get rid of them. But they won on the weekend, so well done to Huddersfield, 20-12 over Castleford Tigers. Any sort of comments on those games, or do you want to take us straight to the ladder?
I might take it straight to the ladder. I mean, good to see, and we'll talk about this later. Good to see London get another win from my point of view. But look, we've got two teams up the top on 34 points: Hull Kingston Rovers and Wigan Warriors. Below that, just 2 points behind, we've got Warrington Wolves on 32. Then it's a fair drop to St Helens on 26, Catalan Dragons on 26, Salford Red Devils on 26. So that's the 6 at the moment. With a 6-team finals, and then just outside, Lee Leopards and Lee Rhinos. Lee Leopards on 23. Lee's Rhinos on 22. The other teams, led by the Huddersfield Giants, are a fair way down from there. So yeah, there's 8 teams basically, and I think 5 rounds to go. Sort of contesting the Super League.
Yeah, the fact that London are finally starting to come good further reinforces my point of view that the English Super League is in no position to have promotion or relegation. If we had a licensing system, for, the past few years, we would have seen teams like hopefully Toulouse or London, for that matter, really start to grow. You'd probably empathise with that being a West Tigers fan. Your team would have been relegated many years ago.
Yes. Yeah, they would have gone a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's get to our next segment. For those readers that don't know, we have a new column that Stuart writes every Monday morning. It's called Kick to the Corners and can be read on the everythingrugbyleague.com website. So I'm going to read through this morning's column from Stuart and perhaps get your thoughts on each point that you've written about. So the first one is what caught our attention from the weekend? So Penrith's chances of a four-peat got a lot better after scans suggested that Nathan Cleary could be back in time for the finals after injuring his shoulder in the loss to Melbourne. Kick to the Corners believes that Nathan would have nailed the 2-point field goal in the dying seconds. Anything else to add to this?
Yeah, look, I think we all know the capability of Nathan Cleary. We also know that if Penrith is going to do a four-peat, I think Nathan Cleary's got to be there. We saw as I mentioned before, the clutch play with a 2-point field goal. I do believe Nathan Cleary, as he has done many times before, would have nailed that. He's a expert at coming up with the clutch play. But yeah, look, I think the news is probably good, and he'll be there for the finals. Penrith may. Although they've been pretty good without Cleary, with Luai sort of running the show. But they may drop a game or two, but I don't think that will hurt them too much in the lead up to the finals.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Nothing contrary for me to add to that one. Second one is Teddy and Brandon Smith winding back the clock in the Roosters' win over the Eels, but what is going on with the drainage at Allianz Stadium? Gutherson described the recently renovated field as one of the worst I've played on.
Yeah. Look, that was just like I haven't seen a field like that for a long time. I mean, that reminds me of when I was playing and the drainage on fields and the fact that if it rained, then you'd be playing in a flood basically. Very surprising that first of all that Allianz Stadium was only renovated a year or two ago, and to have that sort of surface, I'm not sure what happened there. As far as the game goes, I think it's really important for Roosters, if they are going to go on in the finals, to have Brandon Smith in form. He's an inconsistent player, as we know. He's been up and down all year, but if he's playing well and James Tedesco is playing well, then I think the Roosters are a chance.
Yeah, I agree. The Roosters are a team that I would not want to come up against in the finals because whilst they're not as consistent as the Panthers or the Storm, you know that they have the talent to beat anyone on their day, including the Panthers and the Storm. But the third point is West Tigers staying in the fight to avoid the wooden spoon after almost throwing away another game. What was your heart like during this game?
The blood pressure was very high. But as Tigers fans, we're used to it. I mean, 16-4 at half time, you just know that the opposition is going to come back in the second half and that we're going to contribute to their comeback. And, West Tigers did exactly that. Mistakes, ill discipline, all that sort of stuff, poor defence in the second half. I think we're probably lucky that South are fairly restricted with injuries on with their attack and haven't got that sort of attack out wide that they'd have with Latrell Mitchell, Campbell Graham, Alex Johnson, guys like that who are missing at the moment. If they were there, it probably would have been a different story. I mean, I think the Tigers were better this week, but they're still a long way defence wise from challenging the better teams.
I can definitely empathize with that. And then someone says, "Oh, mate, you guys got this one in the bag." You just look at them like you want to punch them in the face. So
Yeah,
I can empathize with
never
that.
in the bag at West Tigers. Never in the bag.
Not the Warriors. All right, next point is Kieran Foran walking around the field like a tradie who has been on the tools for 40 years while playing his 300th match after debuting for Manly in 2009. Jake Trbojevic and Mitchell Pearce were on hands to witness the milestone. So well done, Kieran Foran. Anything more to add to this one?
Yeah, look, Kieran Foran has just been an amazing player. A lot of it's been amazing because, I mean, his early days he played with such speed and intensity. He's never been the most talented player, but certainly, one of the biggest hearts around. To get 300 games, given the injuries he's had on-field and off-field problems during his career. But he's always a big asset to whatever team he plays for.
Yeah, and I think as the blokes at Hello Sport continuously point out by calling him Pops, is the only granddad in the NRL, if you include step kids.
Yeah, well, he, as I said, he walks like a granddad because I think he's just been battered and bruised over the years, and like I think in his retirement years, the arthritis might kick in fairly heavily.
Yeah, Tohu Harris probably a member of that club too. Second last point under the what caught our attention from the weekend, it was all about the blockers as the Sharks and Knights traded field goal attempts before Cronulla converted one legally in Gold Point. This was fascinating to see. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, the blocker thing. So it's an interesting one. I thought the first one, which Newcastle attempted, perhaps. That Cronulla attempted. Perhaps there was some blocking involved. The second one, where before Golden Point, where Cronulla attempted, they had the same structural lineup, but I don't think any defender got blocked there. It seems like I don't know whether it's something the referees are focusing on more at the moment or what. Cronulla got away with it in the end with Golden Point. But yeah, I almost thought it was the blocker thing was a bit too heavy a focus on it, maybe.
I love it. I'm sick of seeing my team lose to field goals where players are offside. There's, the guy that played the ball, the hooker passing the ball, then taking a step to the right, a forward just standing right next to the play of the ball, all that kind of crap that the good teams have exploited over the years. I think this is a step in the right direction, if you ask me.
Okay.
All right, next point is New Zealand Rugby Sevens Olympic gold medalist Stacey Walker scoring the winning try for Brisbane against Canberra in the NRLW. Australian Rugby Sevens veteran Shani Smale, Nee Williams, debuting for Cronulla. The Sharks are the only undefeated team in the NRLW after 4 rounds.
Yeah, so I think I'm sort of making the point there that the NRLW comp, to me, is arguably the best women's rugby comp in the world. It's a really strong competition, and I think that's shown by Olympic gold medalists coming and playing. I think there'll be more women's sevens rugby Australian players come and play as well. And at the moment, with the way the games are, the players are able to adapt pretty quickly from coming from rugby sevens to rugby league and performing particularly well. So I think it's nice that the rugby sevens has got a competition where we do have that interchange between union and league, and there's also a number of English players in the competition as well. So I think it just adds to the competition, to be honest.
Yeah, this competition is absolutely flying. I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. I think it's by far the highest quality domestic female rugby league or rugby union competition in the world of either code. And a bit of a pot shot at the AFL here. It is so much better at competition. I think the crowds are bigger, and the score lines are a hell of a lot more even. And the patience game that the NRL played with expanding slowly is really paid off in building up the skill set. And we're seeing some genuine Olympic medalists looking at the NRLW and joining the NRLW, or being envious of their teammates who have joined the NRLW. And the more that wage goes up, the better. The only thing I will say is someone with a hugely expansionist mindset is overall, I love the 3 state of origins this year. Let's have it every year. Sell out crowds almost in all 3 games. Tremendous effort. We need to avoid the same mistakes that happened in the men's competition, which is when State of Origin got bigger and bigger, international rugby league fell by the wayside, and it still, to this day, hasn't caught up. So if we can somehow keep nurturing the New Zealand side of the women's game and make Australia versus New Zealand a really sort of annual event with a 3-game series as well, that's something that I would fully endorse, and it's helped by the Warriors coming back in 2025. Have you got any thoughts on that?
I do. I totally agree with that. I was really excited to see that also that the Gillaroos are going to play England in Vegas next year. But there does need to be more international exposure for the Gillaroos. The other thing is that the Pacific nations, there's a lot of Polynesian players in the NRLW. So I'm thinking, that Tonga, Samoa, Fiji are going to be really strong nations in the women's space in the next couple of years, and we should be ensuring that they get the same level of international exposure as well.
Yeah, and like it or loathe it, for anyone listening, it is only the NRL that can really fund that, or the Australian government, whether it should be the NRL funding, Tonga's domestic team or whatever you want, Fiji. That's not what we're debating. We're saying the only organization with the money to actually do that is the NRL. So approach that with a level of pragmatism. And we'll be able to achieve our goals as a game, in my point. But on to this one's called London Calling. Despite knowing that they won't be in Super League next year due to IMG gradings, bottom place London Broncos pulled off a win at Magic Weekend over Hull FC after also defeating Catalan Dragons recently. Whilst London teams have had a checkered history and struggled over the years, Kick to the Corners believes that there needs to be a London team in the Super League. I am fascinated by this paragraph, and you have the floor, my friend. How would you do it? Why does there need to be a team?
Yeah, look, well, I think London is an absolute key in the UK market, and I know it's been tried before in a number of different formats. I think you have to give London a pass in this situation. Reading about the gradings, it seems there's a lot of dispute over how London was even graded by IMG. It appears as though maybe they it wasn't the London market they were talking about. It was just the number of rugby league fans in London, which would, is a very small amount comparatively. I just think it's important that we get outside the M62 area. There's some great northern clubs, but we need to think outside the square. So, there'll be a lot of people disagree with this, but I think London needs to have assistance to achieve success, and people need to be patient with the team. My understanding is this year, knowing that they were going to be relegated the year, they spent on players to make a good championship team, not necessarily a good Super League team, because obviously they didn't want to throw money at it when they knew they weren't going to be in the competition the year after. But yeah, no, I'm firmly believe of London, Catalans, hopefully Toulouse as well, which we had for a short while. They should all be there. Otherwise, it's a little local. You might as well say it's like that the local Canberra rugby league competition as far as distances.
I agree. My feedback in regards, what I was surprised to see when the criteria for IMG was first revealed was that there wasn't a salary cap floor. Because my issue all along, and for those that don't know, the NRL does have a salary cap floor where you must spend at least 95% of whatever the current salary cap is.
Yep.
Now, the English Super League has a salary cap of £2.1 million, plus a couple of marquee players, which would mean that only a small fraction of their wage will be included in the actual salary cap. Now, anecdotally, less than half of the teams would come close to spending £2.1 million. London would, I'll be shocked if London approached £1 million, quite frankly.
Yep.
We had teams like Wakefield, who were only recently relegated last year, who were consistently spending around £1.1 million of the £2.1 million, so half of the salary cap. And all they needed to do was to beat other teams that were also spending around half the salary cap. So what you had a competition of two halves. You had the big dogs like St Helens, Wigan, Warrington, etc., even Catalans. We knew that they always spend like the lion's share of their salary cap, the bare minimum. But teams like Wakefield weren't competing with the teams that I just mentioned. They were competing with the other teams that are also only spending about £1 million, knowing that you don't need to beat the big dogs. You just need to survive and not get relegated. And what that meant is that the consistency of on-field product really, really suffered in my mind. So when IMG reviewed all the finances, went through the game from top to bottom, I was shocked that they didn't include a salary cap floor. So I looked into this. And apparently if they did force a salary cap floor on every Super League club, there wouldn't be enough clubs to play in the Super League, because people are the top flight clubs are taking the grant from head office, which comes largely via the TV revenue, and using it not to pay the salary cap, but just to pay their administrative costs a lot of the time. And if you force them to spend the full £2.1 million, they wouldn't be able to afford to pay the administrative costs. Now, I'd like to hear more certainty that the game is working towards a minimum salary cap floor, because the on-field product, rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. But have you got any, I know that's a bit of esoteric and niche commentary from me. Have you got any thoughts on a salary cap floor for the Super League?
Oh, look, I think that has to happen. Otherwise, you're playing you're almost playing in different competitions. If teams can't get to a certain level, then it makes it very difficult, and it just doesn't make a good competition to have that situation. So I can see in the NRL where clubs can afford it, that there is a floor, and I think that means that clubs are at a certain standard that we expect as fans to see them at.
Yep, I concur. All right, Magic Puzzle. The decision to hold Super League Magic Weekend at Elland Road, Leeds, lacks the vision that has been displayed in the past when venues such as Cardiff, Edinburgh, Liverpool, Manchester and Newcastle were played. Whilst lower costs were believed to be the motivator for choosing the venue, it's a lost opportunity to showcase the sport outside the heartlands and provide a weekend away for fans. Newcastle, Dublin, Nottingham, Paris and Cardiff are believed to be options for next year. If Dublin, Paris and Paris were to get Magic Weekend next year, I'll be over the moon, but shocked.
Yeah, I'd be shocked as well. But look, Magic Weekend, to me that was the original idea. And as an aside, there's not many things the NRL have taken from Super League as an idea and said, well, that's successful there. Let's bring it here. But Magic Weekend is one of those. And it, Magic Weekend's I think been going 17 years in the UK. But yeah, I'd love to see Paris, Dublin, even Nottingham would be innovative. There's never had a Magic Weekend. It's sort of from my understanding, a rough understanding of geography, sort of be halfway in between where the rugby league's played and London. But Elland Road was just like there's two reasons that you probably hold a Magic Weekend in a particular city. One is to bring it to a new audience, the games to a new audience, and showcase the sport. The second is so that rusted on fans can have a weekend away somewhere. A weekend away in Leeds is probably not. I know they've been playing in Newcastle, and as Australians, we think, well, geographically, that's not much different. But I think to people in the UK, it is. And I think they lost an opportunity there. The Sunday games had the lowest attendance ever for a Magic weekend. Combined, it was the second lowest attendance, only beaten by, um, I think perhaps an early Cardiff round, but yeah, so it was the second lowest anyway. So
Yeah.
I understand why they did it in some ways. Apparently, St James Park in Newcastle, where they've held it in the last few years, wasn't available, and they were looking at the cost factor was a lot cheaper to go to Elland Road. But I think Magic Weekend's one in the UK where they can use it to expand the game, or at least showcase it to a different audience. And yeah, I thought it was a missed opportunity, to be honest.
Yeah, I very much agree. It's equivalent to the NRL holding our Magic Round in Sydney. I don't care how much the New South Wales Events Government
Yeah.
agency is prepared to pay for it. It'd be an absolute wasted opportunity because we're already a saturated market.
Yeah, and
All right, there you go.
oh, sorry, I was just going to say, even with the Australian one, let's think about Perth, etc. When particularly with perhaps bringing the Western Bears in, let's think about that as a possible venue as well.
Great call. Next point is East meets West in the USA. So the USA Rugby League would hold their grand final next weekend when Washington, D.C. Cavalry from the East come up against the Provo Broncos from the West. Both teams come off big scoring finals, with Washington defeating Southwest Florida Copperhead 64-50. No defense in that game.
No.
In overtime, of course, the Utah-based Broncos won 56-32 over the Los Angeles Banditos. Provo are the early tip to take the premiership over the longer-established Washington team, captained by former Toronto Wolfpack and Barrow Raiders player Ryan Burrows.
Yeah, look, yeah, those scores were pretty big. Either the attack's fantastic or the defense is terrible. I'm not sure which. But look, the thing about the USA is they're under a new administration, the USA Rugby League. There's been a lot of stopping and starting, as you probably know, Keith, in the USA. We hear a lot about potential, but the results aren't there a lot of the time. The NRL is taking games to Las Vegas, did last time, and will again next year. I think that's a good thing for the game there. But it would also be great to see the domestic competition flourish. The Provo Broncos are an interesting one. I think they're mainly from Utah, mainly a Polynesian team, and apparently doing good things there. So yeah. It seems that USA Rugby League. I know we had some some starting points with people talking about professional rugby league. I think a lot of people were jumping in way too quickly with that. But look, if they can sustain a domestic comp that builds, let's hope it carries on.
Yes, maybe Nick Politis can help with that, given his work with LA.
Yeah, well, I believe the Los Angeles Banditos might soon become the Los Angeles Roosters. So, yeah.
The only concern I have with that is when a rich benefactor takes over a domestic club, we see them straight away take all the talent from the other clubs. And then we just have one club with resources and other clubs with no resources. So hopefully that doesn't happen in this case. Have you got any concerns around that, though?
Yeah, look, I have seen that before. I think, we could look back and I did see an article, it might have been Steve Mascott or something, wrote a little bit of an article about that. And I think he was pointing to Serbia in particular, where that happened for a while. Where you have one dominant team, all the players with any talent gravitate to the one club, particularly if they're actually, there's a bit of cash going around as well. That doesn't necessarily help with development in the long term.
Yes. All right. Let's move on to Irish fight for a win in Wales. So the Wales Grand Final resulted in a 21-18 win for Aberravon fighting. Aberravon fighting Irish over previously unbeaten South Wales Jets. It reversed the results from last season. Any quick comments on that one?
Yeah, not a lot there. South Wales Jets, sort of up and coming club that done very well. And yeah, the Fighting Irish got over them there, which sounds like it's a good thing for the domestic competition. I think things are sort of building slowly there in Wales as well. With we saw not that long ago Scotland and Ireland having their full membership taken away from them. I think Wales is doing a good job of not only at the men's level, but also the women's and also the youth level as well, in trying to develop the game, in a very passionate rugby union country.
Yep, well done. Next point is Twin Jets. So two iconic second-tier clubs have joined together to launch a bid to become the 20th NRL club. The Sydney-based Newtown Jets and the Queensland team Ipswich Jets, who can boast Alvie Langer and the Walters brothers as former players, are proposing a club to be called the Jets, with no geographic references as per the Dolphins. The team would be based in Ipswich, with one home game in Sydney and an NRL trial at Henson Park. If this and the Western Bears bids are successful, we will see two foundation clubs return to having a stake in the NRL after a number of years in the wilderness. I don't know about this one, Stuart. You a fan?
Look, I try to look at this from being a fan of the club, and I thought the same about Newtown. I'm in North Sydney, sorry, and this time in Newtown. If you're a Newtown fan, how much interest have you got in a Queensland-based team? If you're a North Sydney fan, how much have you got interest? You've got a Perth-based team. Um, I assume with Newtown that John Singleton's there with some backing. And I don't know about the financial situation of the Ipswich Jets. I'm not even sure that the 20th team should be another Queensland team. So, there's a few questions there for me.
Yeah, I think we've reached the cap for New South Wales and Queensland teams. I don't think it's genuine expansion. I think it's an absolutely terrible idea, quite frankly. I think Newtown have sort of struck the right mix with their fan base at the moment. Inner city yuppies that are appealing to something that's not the NRL. So it offers something different, something like a heyday to yesterday where you can rock up, with your sort of fancy hats on, or you drink your craft beer, and I think they've absolutely nailed their audience, and I don't think they should muck with that whatsoever. And as I said, quite frankly, no more teams in New South Wales or Queensland. Yep. They got it right with either. If it's not a second New Zealand team for the 20th team, then the only other one that I'll be pretty stoked with is an Adelaide team. Yep. Put that final dot on a Big Five city map. All right, so second last point. International Rugby League gets commercial. So on the back of appointing John Nicol as its head of commercial and operations based in Sydney, the IRL has launched an invitation to tender for a strategic commercial partner or partners. This is an ambitious goal, but there is a good product if managed correctly. The 2026 World Cup will be hosted by Australia and is the first to figure prominently in any discussions. So this is obviously, in my mind, something to do with Peter V'landys and Andrew Abdo sort of getting more power after that Singapore meeting. What was it, 6 months ago now, or something like that? They're looking to really grow the revenue of the IRL. Surely this is related to that.
I would think so. And look, to be honest, if they are to get, partners, sponsors, etc., I mean, 99% it's going to come from Australia, isn't it? I mean, who else is going to? I mean, the UK, I think, they would have difficulty. Any other rugby league country around the world, I mean, I think it's been proven that they're not going to throw money at a sport that they know very little about, and hasn't got a proven track record in the country. So I think they're trying to exploit the Australian market. I do think, and we discussed this before, and the Greek thing about international rugby league and where's the money going to come from, etc., etc. And I do think it's a good product. Perhaps if the new guy sort of is on the ball, perhaps there's merit in it. I'm still, I've still got some doubts, and I think if it is, international rugby league has to be presented and marketed in a different way than it is at the moment. You know, it's almost like an afterthought. It's still scattered, across the season. The IRL will talk about that they've got a forward program and stuff, but look, I don't really see it. I think you have to have things locked in, and a product that can be marketed, a long way out for the fans.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we need to make it more of an event. Every international game needs to be a big event, even an over-the-top event. And the thing with international games, whether it be any sport you can think of, is there's always overlap between genuine love for the sport that you paid a ticket to watch and patriotism.
Yep.
I don't think that we're really sort of exploiting the patriotism aspect of it. We're marketing to normal NRL fans and saying, here's some of the best players in the world, even though a lot of them withdraw because it's the end of the year. We're not really, and it's perhaps a consequence of Australia being so dominant that even me as an Australian don't mind seeing the Kangaroos lose because I know it's great for the sport that I love.
It's a common feeling, yeah.
Yeah. All right. The last point, French Youth to Tour. So forgive my pronunciation here. Fédération Française de Rugby 13 will send an under-19s team to Australia and New Zealand at the end of this season in a bid to prepare players for the 2026 World Cup. The decision to tour comes on the back of France going down 15-8 to England Community Alliance in the recent under-19s European Championship in Serbia. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, look, I think it's a smart move by France. I think they need to be developing teams at a younger level, and I think they need to those their best young players need to come out and see what's going on in places like Australia and New Zealand, and see where the line is. Basically, what do they need to aspire to as players? And also, gets them a good look at the setups and the development setups in these countries that hopefully they can take back to France. Because the sport needs a healthy French team, and we haven't had that for a long while. So I think exercises like this are a good thing.
I agree. And I think Trent Robinson nailed it when he said that you need to focus a lot of your energy on genuine French halves and spine positions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a band that has great guitarists and drummers, etc., but no good lead singer.
Yep.
Lead singer is always the hardest to find.
Absolutely.
In the spine positions. All right, let's round out this wonderful episode with a quick fire tips for the NRL. So the first game is on Thursday night at Leichhardt. We've got the Tigers, a real suburban affair. West Tigers versus the Manly Seagulls. West Tigers paying $5.10 just for the win. Are there any chance at all?
I'd love to say yes, but the answer is no. I think Manly's the sort of team, with the way the West Tigers defend, Manly can put a big score on them, on particularly and run right on the edges, particularly with Tommy Turbo coming back to his best. I think it's a real danger game for the West Tigers.
Yeah, it's hard to go past Manly for this one, even though I'm behind in the tipping comp and need to make it up for somewhere. I'm not.
Yeah, I don't think that's where you can. Yeah.
All right, next one. On Friday, 6 p.m., my beloved Warriors take on the Bulldogs. Warriors paying $2.75 for the win. Any chance?
Yeah, look, I think they are a chance actually at home. This will be Sean Johnson's last game at home, I believe.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of emotion there. I think because of that, I think they've sold out all their games anyway in Auckland. So There'll be a good, loud, roaring, cheering crowd there. Um, but in saying that, I think the Bulldogs have been very, very good in the last few weeks. They're really starting to consolidate themselves as a finals team. Um, Look, if I was looking to go up in the tips, that might be one that I might put in there and hope. If you squeeze me, I'm going to say the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Doggies as well. Doggies have an amazing defense right now, and unfortunately, the Warriors got a reputation for, they might come at you for the first 20 minutes, but just survive that period, and then they'll crack and they'll be demoralized. Unfortunately, sorry, Warriors. But next game is the Broncos up against Parramatta in Brisbane. Parramatta $3.25 for the win. That's pretty juicy odds in my mind.
It is juicy odds. And yeah, Parramatta, weren't good against the Roosters, but the Roosters are very good. Brisbane, hard to tell. I mean, on paper, you're always going to say Brisbane look a very good team, but they're not. They haven't been performing that way. At home, I'll say Brisbane, but I don't think Parramatta are. I'm not saying that Parramatta are not a chance.
Yeah, this is the first game that I'm going to tip the underdog to try and make up ground in my tipping competition, and I'm going to go with the Eels.
Yep.
Next game, Canberra hosts Penrith in Canberra. You never know with Canberra. $3.28 for the win. Thoughts on this?
Look, and I might even go along to that one, but the Raiders, I've seen a bit of the Raiders this year. Recently, they've been their defense has been very poor. Panthers obviously won't have Cleary, but they've been winning games without Cleary for a lot of the year. I can't. I mean, I'd love to see the Raiders get up there, but I can't see it, to be honest.
Yeah, me either. They just look so lackluster lately. But the next game is the 5:30 Saturday game down in Melbourne. Extremely short odds for Melbourne, $1.17 up against the Dolphins, $5.10. Are the Dolphins any chance at all here?
Look, the Dolphins are one of those teams that can put a good performance on now and again, but away in Melbourne, the Storm are really starting to ramp up. Munster's starting to get back to his best form. Look, again, I think I'd have to just go Melbourne, and I don't think the Dolphins are a chance. Although, I mean, the Dolphins are playing for a spot in the 8, so they're going to be pretty desperate. And I think $5.10 is probably a bit over for what their chances. But yeah, I'll go Melbourne.
Yeah, I can't go past Melbourne for that one. Rabbitohs versus the Knights. Knights have impressed me lately. Rabbitohs $2.55 as the home team, and Knights $1.52. Rabbitohs a chance?
They might be, but without I didn't think much of their performance against the West Tigers. And look, unless they're getting players back, which I don't think they are, the Knights went very, very close to beating Cronulla on the weekend. Kicked a field goal and it was a win. I think the Knights have got this, even though the Rabbitohs are at home.
Yeah, I'm closer to going for the upset with this one than some of the others, but I'll still inevitably go with Newcastle, I think. However, this next game, I will go the upset. So I'm going to go the Titans, even though they're paying $4.75 to beat the Roosters at $1.19. Do you think I'm crazy?
No, I actually don't. I tipped the Titans last week, hoping that the Titans are a team that can, they're rocks and diamonds, aren't they? They can be very good. They've got the players are capable of being very good. Alternately, I was very impressed with the Roosters, and I think they're really starting to find their rhythm. I don't think you're crazy, but I think again I'd have to go to Roosters.
Yeah, I'm desperate. For the record, if this is like week 1 of the tipping competition, of course I would go the Roosters, but I'm about 6 points behind. I need to make it up.
Yeah, look, and that's one that could, that could go the other way.
Yeah. Next one, a bit of a derby, or it is the derby, really. St George Illawarra Dragons take on the Cronulla Sharks. This one's in Wollongong on a Sunday afternoon. If that's a sunny day, what an advertisement for rugby league next to the beach there. Who have you got for this one?
I'm going to go with the Dragons for this one. I think that I haven't been that impressed with the Sharks lately. I know a couple of weeks ago they had a big win. I watched their game against Newcastle. They're certainly not showing that they're a top 4 team at the moment. I think the Dragons will be wanting to consolidate their top 8 position. They're at home in Wollongong. Yeah, I'm going to go the Dragons.
I'm going to go whatever percentage of people are going against. So if that makes sense. When you do the tipping on footytips.com.au, you can see like 60% of people have tipped the Dragons or 60% have tipped the Sharks. I'm going to go with the lower percentage because I can see either side winning this game. Which, listeners, seems like a perfect point to leave this great episode in. So thanks for making your debut on the actual Everything Rugby League Monday wrap-up podcast, Stu. We'll hopefully have you on in the future.
Thanks for listening to Everything Rugby League. If you like this episode, give the show a follow and leave a review. For more news and insights, follow us on Facebook or head to everythingrugbyleague.com.